Hey, this is Jared Krause, host of the Buying Online Businesses podcast, and this is episode number 5. And I had a very special guest, Flippa CEO, Mr. Blake Hutchison, who runs the biggest online marketplace for buying and selling website businesses. And in this episode, we talk about where beginner website investors should start out, how to do great due diligence on these websites to make sure they're good investments, the returns that can be made from buying websites, and where not only Flippa, but this whole industry of buying online businesses is actually headed. So very valuable, jam-packed episode, and I hope you like it. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Buying Online Businesses podcast. And today I have a very special guest with me, Mr. Blake Hutchison, who is the CEO of Flippa, which is the biggest marketplace online for buying and selling websites, which needs no introduction at all in itself, especially to my audience who already knows all about Flippa. So Blake, I just want to say thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. Very, very grateful to have you on board. And there's a lot of things that we're going to be chatting about today, but first and foremost, I want to ask you, how did you get into the role of jumping in and becoming the CEO of Flippa?
Yeah, firstly, Jared, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's an absolute pleasure. Yeah, in looking answer to that question, it's been a long journey for me with Flippa. So I tried to sell my own business on Flippa back in 2015. And my business was an online marketplace to buy and sell specialty food. So retailers of food would set up a storefront and they would ship the product out themselves, but we essentially were the web conduit to their customers and a broader group in the food-loving community across Australia. So I started that business. It was a pretty good business. We got to about $1 million in revenue, but we certainly didn't surpass our empire building dreams or achieve our empire building dreams. So I went to sell that business on Flippa. And so good understanding of how the platform works, how buyers engage with sellers, the things that a business owner needs to do to set up their business and make it ready for sale. And so over that time, have been watching Flippa. I then went and joined a company called Xero, small business accounting software. Really good, innovative company based in New Zealand with a big outpost in Melbourne, Australia. And then from there, I was running a business called Luxury Escapes. So the board of Flippa decided that they wanted to hire a new CEO, which one had small business experience, two, which had sort of built a big business, and that was Luxury Escapes, which many Australians will be familiar with. And built trust into that business. And so Flippa, myself and I found a good fit, and here I am. So 6 months into the job, and we're doing a lot of exciting, we're working on a lot of exciting things. And of course, we're building on the base that is Flippa, that everyone already knows, a massive community worldwide who are there to buy and sell websites.
Excellent, and congratulations, especially, from your outset of having that business, bringing it to Flippa, going around into the different sort of corporate space, especially Xero. Like a lot of us in Australia definitely use that company. I know I do for my businesses and company. So that's excellent. And so I guess you would have learnt so much about, especially in the first 6 months. I know that when I was a tradie, I know the first year to 6 months, I learnt so much just about that job. And I guess you would have picked up a lot. And we've talked a little bit before this podcast on some of the things that you have been doing, which we'll touch on through the podcast. But my main question that I want to start a snowball into is what's your, from learning and being in this role overseeing Flippa, is what, in the changes that you've made to Flippa to make it a better marketplace, what's your kind of advice for people who have either come across Flippa and the whole buying websites field and they've only just found out about it? Because most people do come to, they find out about Flippa first before they go and see all these different other places. And Flippa is definitely the authority in the marketplace for this. But what would you say your advice would be on somebody has just come across this whole buying websites thing and wanted to get started in it?
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing is there is a large community out there. So the first thing I learned was how passionate that community was, how many people from all over the world are, one, interested in selling a website, and then 2, interested in buying a website. And so with that in mind, it absolutely is a burgeoning and exciting space to be in. As it relates to advice for first-time users, the first thing I would say, and it sounds a little bit drastic, but the first thing I would say is absolutely go in eyes wide open. And that's because the whole buying and selling website phenomenon is super fast growth, 1, and 2, there is a huge community around the world who are in it. And some of those people in fact, most of those people have really good intentions. And so the vast majority of people have every intention of building a great business, and at the point at which they have built a great site or a business, have every intention of exiting that to someone who is just as passionate as they are about that. Now, there are a small few who don't have the best of intentions. And so critically, every community member, and frankly, it's not just with respect to Flippa, it's with respect to almost any online marketplace environment where there is a buy side and a sell side coming together. People need to, 1, do their research, 2, engage with the seller, not just buy something from a seller because it sounds good, rather engage and understand and get a clear view as to what it is that you're buying. And 3, once you have taken over control of something, be prepared to invest time and effort, because the concept of turnkey is relative. And for some people, it literally is take it over, run with it, build it, and have a lot of success. For other people, the concept of owning a website, while it sounds simple, is actually quite foreign. And so you do need to know what skills you are good at and where your limitations are. And so, again, in summary, go in eyes wide open. Don't fall headfirst in love with something at face value, and absolutely start having a discussion with the seller to ensure that you know what you're getting yourself into.
Wow, such a good answer, Blake, and thank you so much, because I think, and I actually covered this in my episode number 3, for those of you guys who are listening, about the intention of people that do sell. And a lot of people that do come in with their eyes not wide open, they have the perception that people are just trying to sell their business to make money from somebody else. And I really, like, from what I've seen, and all of my clients have gone away and bought businesses, is most of the people that do build these businesses do have a really good intention, and they are actually passionate about what they've built. And nearly every single case that I've seen is, especially for myself and for my clients, is that when somebody sells their business, it's kind of like they're selling their baby, and they want to make sure that the person who does buy it knows how to be prepared, like you said, and how to grow this business or build it, because I don't just want to hand this over to somebody for them to destroy it. And there's a massive distinction there between what people come in with their eyes sort of half shut, should I say, or definitely not wide open, and they have that perception. So I love that you put that in there as like, 1, do the research, 2, make sure you engage with that, the individual who's selling it. And a massive part is be prepared. And what I find is, for somebody who wants to sell their business and they do have the best intention, is that they are going to help that person be prepared with, specific training. And on Flippa, I've seen that. I was looking through Flippa today and yesterday, and I look through there regularly. And there are owners that do ensure they're going to give a certain amount of training to those new investors, or new owners, should I say.
I think there's a couple of really interesting things you said there. 1, really genuine small business owners are really passionate about what they've built. Certainly. And so it's incumbent on the buyer, the potential or prospective buyer, to ensure that they respect that passion. Because ultimately, as you said, it is like handing off your little baby. The second thing, which I think you said, which is really, really important there, is that Most business owners or website owners absolutely should and will provide support services in what we might term a handover period. And if they aren't willing to provide that, you might want to ask yourself a question about the legitimacy of that business, of that website. Because the website owners who don't want to provide any support post handover, I personally don't encourage that.
That's so great to hear, especially from you being with Flippa. And I'm the same. It's just insane to go away and buy something and not have any support. And thank you for bringing that up, especially knowing that I know that you guys are heavily focusing on that in Flippa and making sure you keep your brand really, really solid. And I know you've been building that brand over the last 6 months plus. So what do you think? Because you mentioned, do a bit of research, which is what we call the due diligence for websites. What would you say are some of the biggest things people kind of fail on when they're doing, due diligence?
Yeah, great question. I think the most, and I can't even believe this happens, but the biggest gap is people actually using the website themselves and undertaking kind of almost user testing.
Yeah, user design.
You'll be able to discover so much by pretending you are a customer of the business that you are or website that you're looking to buy. And so read the content, test its legitimacy based on your own consumption habits and what you would look for in a good content website. If it's an e-commerce business, buy something, literally buy it, wait for it to come to your house. Make sure it is what you thought you were getting. If it's not what you thought you were getting, ask the seller why, in fact, it's not what you thought you were getting. And so I think there's a lot of really technical things you can do. So, of course, we can look at the GA records, the Google Analytics records. We can look at Ahrefs. We can look at SEMrush. We can look at all these tools that give us kind of a forensic insight into the business. But to answer your question, the simplest thing and the most basic thing is to use the site that you are intending to buy, not just read what a seller says about it, and form your own view as to whether it's a good quality website or business before going any further.
Isn't that crazy that people will not even go around and look at every single page of the site? And a huge thing and thank you for that, that's a great value add for everybody listening, is a crazy thing that I see is people don't even go on sometimes the social media accounts and, Facebook, Instagram, or even getting in contact with them, like you said, and seeing how engaged that owner is and how much they really want to put into the business and how much passion they have driven behind it. And then also how engaged everybody else is in the business, in the comments on social media and everything else like that. What sort of reviews do they have, depending on how, old the business is. So Blake, what other patterns have you seen in the reason that people would sell, one of their business? Like, obviously there's a lot of people that do have great intent. And I talked about this, like I said, again, before in episode number 3, there's a different type of seller. And different reasons. What would you say is like the biggest pattern on why somebody would sell a business?
Yeah, great question. Look, I think there's a few. The first one is that they have a great skill in starting something off, but they don't have a great skill in accelerating the growth or building on that beginning. And so what we hear from a lot of people is that they've got it to a certain stage and they have got it to the position which they believe is within their capability, and they're now looking to pass it on to somebody else who has the ability to grow it further with a specific capability, particularly something like marketing, right? So lots of people can create a great website with great content, engage with a community to get more content, drive a traffic base, build some revenue through, Amazon affiliate revenue or something like that. But what they then lack is a sophisticated marketing skill set, and so therefore they'll sell to someone who does have that skill set and can grow it from there. So that would be kind of point one. Point two would be someone who, frankly, has run out of energy, right? So you hear a lot about people who say, well, I've worked on this for 2 years, I've worked on it for 3 years, I've fallen out of love with it. It's a good website, it functions, there's a good community, it's making a good amount of money, and they believe now is the optimum time to sell because they have got it to a certain point, but frankly have lost the passion for doing what they were doing. The third one is that essentially you get people who are in the business of actually creating things to sell. And so they'll start something, they'll get it to a certain point. That might be, 9 to 18 months worth of traffic generation and the beginnings of revenue generation. And they are then looking to sell it on, but their intent from the very beginning was to do so. I think lastly, you get genuine business builders who have been in the game for 5 to 10 years, who have created really, really good businesses. And it's now the optimum time to exit because they've built so much value. There's so much value creation in that business, and it's the perfect time to exit. And we know that right now, online small business buying is at the peak of its powers. In the US, it's grown 27% year on year, and there is a huge buying community out there. So from a good quality small business owner's perspective, it's the best time to sell because there's so much demand.
That's excellent. And I have to certainly agree with you is that and this is why I teach with a lot of my clients, is that we don't just want to go away and buy a business and just, keep it going. I prefer to teach them how to grow businesses so they can add so much value. And we definitely see those businesses where it can be quite easy to just, like you said, get the content up, have it running for a year or so and start getting some traffic in. And maybe they've tried to monetize it, but often what I've found in Flippa is they've monetized it to a certain extent and then they just haven't been able to take it to the next level. And when you just learn even some basic skills in how to monetize traffic through ads or affiliates or whatever it is, it's a huge value add and you can really take that to the next level. And I find on the bigger listings, like you said, somebody's built something up over 5 years, is I like to relate that to investing in property, where sometimes people have lived in their home, they've done a bit of a renovation on it, and they kind of just they've added a lot of value to it, but maybe they just don't want to be living there anymore, and they'd rather take that money and reinvest it in something else that really gets them excited. And doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the business at all, right? What means is that business has been solid for so many years and it's been working, but somebody just doesn't have the enthusiasm behind it, which a new owner could come through and really take it to the next level itself as well. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, I completely agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, cool. And so, like you said, there's so many people, especially the studies that you said, like it's about 27% year on year for people buying small businesses. And that's what I've found when people are coming to this, like the internet is still, I believe, as an investing platform, buying websites is still really in its infancy when you look at investing in property or stocks or so many other different business models that, should we say, in inverted commas, are traditional types of investments, which is where I started out from. Now, with the internet, there's still I can see, and I'm probably sure you agree with me here, Blake, is that I can see there's so much more potential for that growth to just keep growing and growing and growing, because the internet's only been around for about 30 years or so. So I can see there's so much potential there. What's your opinion on that?
Well, one, I completely agree. I mean, I think that there is clearly some more established industries online, and you can see that evidence through what is for sale on Flippa and other environments for that matter. And so what you'll see is that there is a large number of content websites available covering all number of topics and at different sizes. You know, anything from $1,000 website, which has a little bit of traction, all the way through to a $5 million website, which is a leader in its particular niche. And so I think that will continue on. The second one is e-commerce, and between the big three, which would be Shopify, BigCommerce, and Wix, there are, and there's others in there too, there are over 1 million e-commerce stores operating just within those three. And many of those are already for sale, but many of those will come on the market over the next, 3 to 5 years, as those small business owners reach their potential and want to find an exit to someone who's just as passionate as they are about that product. But to your point, it's so immature right now. There are a number of online industries which are yet to reach anywhere near maturity, and so therefore there's few online businesses available yet in markets like the SaaS industry, so software as a service, the marketplace space. There is obviously a growing awareness for, but there's still few businesses available in the fulfilled by Amazon space. And so I think that there's never been a better time to learn, because the best buying opportunities are still around the corner.
Yeah, I love it. And all we have to do is we can talk about this on how much it's going to grow and have a perception on it. But all we have to do is look at the facts and the figures. And the figures are that the returns that are being made from websites are far more substantial than traditional forms of investing like real estate, where you're pretty on the buy and hold method. You'd be pretty happy to get anywhere between 5 to 10%. And it's sort of close with the stock market as well. Now, obviously, as you see, I normally tell people it's roughly 25 to 30% return on investment from a website business. However, I've had a client that he just bought a business and he's making it's a 10-month multiple, so he's going to make 100% return on his investment in 10 months. And that's obviously a little bit out of the ordinary. I've achieved results like that as well, but just the average of the return you can make is so much more substantial than traditional forms. Like, what do you see is an average return you'd see from a website on Flippa? Would it be roughly around the same figures, Blake?
Yeah, that's right. Look, I think that there are so many variables, so I do caution putting a percentage on it, but certainly there are ways to look out for good buys, and there are ways to look out for businesses where you can accelerate your return on investment faster than you would otherwise. And so there's a few things. One, obviously, is the business that you're buying right now in a niche which is currently popular? And so take, for example, the fulfilled by Amazon space. What you want to do is jump on Amazon, look at what the most popular products being sold are, and then see whether there are any businesses which match up to those. So if, for example, you see that there are lots of people who are selling, take, for example, iPhone chargers, and then you come across a fulfilled by Amazon store which is selling iPhone chargers, that would be considered to be a popular space, an evergreen space, and a space where there is a huge market demand for what you're selling. And therefore, if you run it well, you're likely to see growth and you're likely to see an ROI faster than you would otherwise. So that would be one example. The other thing you want to look at, obviously, is what the multiple on net profit is, and then get a clear understanding of what your likely ROI is if you were to run it just as if you were the existing business owner. And so if something is for sale for $50,000, and it's making $25,000 in net income per year, then obviously you've got a 2 times annual net income multiple. And so you need to take that into consideration. But the real question is, do you have a skill set which the existing business owner doesn't have, which might get you faster returns? And so that's all about the due diligence piece and the research piece that you talked about before. And we've seen people, to your point, we've seen people who have had a 50 to 75% ROI within year one, and that's outstanding. That's why we're in the game.
Yeah, and it's really exciting to see those stories happen. And to add to what you said, it's such good value, and thank you for sharing that, is how important it is to, not important, but if you do have a skill that you can use to grow a business, then there's so many ways you can add value. And that's exactly how I started out when I was, Blake, I started out being a travel blogger, and we all know how many travel bloggers there are out there, and that niche was just saturated. Right? I did it for years, and this is a touchy subject for me, especially because I spent so many years doing it and making hardly any money, and I wanted to live that dream lifestyle, but I was doing the whole fake it till you make it, and I had to bite the bullet and get out of it. But through that experience, I learned so much about how to write really good content and how to do some SEO and how to engage with people online. And then when I came to the point where I realized, after starting many of my websites and I sucked at it, I thought, well, if 90% of startups fail, why don't I go away and buy one? I came on Flippa, I bought my first business, and I grew the business through my skills of writing great content. And that's what everybody should be doing when they're looking at buying a website, and how can they use the skills they have now today to build it. And then on top of that, just a short story of this morning, I jumped on Flippa. Actually, it was yesterday, and I jumped on. I was messaging backwards and forwards to a lady, and there's a website there for sale. And it's not an expensive site, or depends on what you call expensive, but it's a business that I know, like I've got a business partner, already has a business in that space, and we could leverage off each other. Even without the skills that I have, we could leverage off each other and help grow not just that business I buy, but their business as well. And that's a really cool thing that we can do in my community as well. And if you guys see something that you can use to grow another business and add value to their business, which will then in turn help you grow that business, that's a really good investment approach as well.
Well, we see a lot of that, actually, Jared. I think that's a really great point. I mean, we see a lot of people buying what we might term a bolt-on business, and the whole benefit is that somebody has done the hard yards before, which is about finding product market fit, building a community, and building some engagement and traction. And as you said, most startups don't work, so you are far better off acquiring a business with traction than you are trying to find traction yourself. It will cost you so much more. And so once someone's found traction, to go and hunt those businesses out which have relevance to what you're currently doing or working on is just such a sensible approach to take.
Yeah, that's great to hear that from you, because that's been my whole methodology for so long. And so there's so many things that we could do and break down in due diligence, and I find one that's quite important is definitely the financials and understanding the financials. I once spent a long time looking at a business that was in a different currency and then converted to US dollars and then converted it to Australia dollars, because it was an Aussie business. And I spent a lot of time trying to do due diligence on it, and it wound out to be a really good investment. And from learning how to do diligence that way, I learned a lot on how to pass that on to people themselves. But there's so many ways you can verify financials. For people who are purchasing businesses from Flippa, what would you say are some of the best sort of ways to start verifying financials for a website?
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing to do is to ask for revenue verification, and that will come straight out of the environment where they are deriving revenue. So if they are a Fulfilled by Amazon store, you would want to see multiple screenshots on request. Now, certainly they'll post a screenshot of their revenue source on Flippa, but you probably want to ask for multiple screenshots from a number of different months over the prior 6-month period, showing you evidence of revenue. And so you obviously get that from Amazon. If it's fulfilled by Amazon store, you would get that from Shopify. If it was Shopify, you would get it from BigCommerce. If it was BigCommerce, and the list goes on. So that's number one. The second one is you'll want to see either a P&L, so a profit and loss statement for the current or prior year, or you will want to see some bank feed data. And so you can simply request that they provide that bank feed data as proof of revenue and proof of expenses. And so that's, really critical, and everyone should ask for that information. And if that information is not forthcoming, then it's sensible not to progress and pursue. So they're simple things, but everyone should be doing that.
Yeah, I love it. So that bank feed data is so important, and I've also gotten people on Shopify. If those guys don't know what Shopify is, it's like a platform, like a website that you can use to build a website business off, and it just hosts like the website. And anyway, I've had clients that go away and they've wanted to verify financials, and I've even gotten them to get viewers access of the Shopify account, which is very, very powerful. And I'm not sure, whether people can do that with other different platforms, but if you can, I definitely certainly suggest looking at doing that. And I also wanted to touch on FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon. For those of you who don't know that are listening, FBA, like Fulfillment by Amazon, means you can have a product for sale and you don't have to ship it out yourself. You can send it to an order fulfillment house, which is Amazon. So they fulfill that order and send it out to the customer for you. And that means you have a completely online business rather than having to be at home and send out orders every single day. So it's a really good method to have in place. And it's a really good business model that's only been around for a couple of years now. Hey, Blake.
Yeah, that's right. It's relatively mature in the US, but certainly very new here in Australia. And so growing area, and I agree with you, it means that you are truly remote. You could operate from anywhere. You can get all of the benefits of running an online business without the headache of owning the distribution element yourself.
And I've got a few more questions that I want to ask about Flippa. Before we get to that, I've got one more about the due diligence. And one of my favorite things to do is to jump on the phone with a seller and ask them questions. And this is a really, really powerful thing to do, because when you jump on the phone with somebody, you really get to feel what their energy is behind the business and why they want to sell and how much information they can give you. Just in that phone call is absolutely amazing. And what are some of the questions you think could be good questions to be asking a seller when you jump on the phone with them, Blake?
Yeah, so I'll give you a really good one. And I don't encourage people to ask it as the first question, because it can be particularly, if you would ask it as the first question, it would come across as you disrespecting the business owner. But certainly get to know the business owner. Be friendly, be polite, find out why they got into the business in the first place. Make sure you understand how they make money. Make sure you understand how they acquire customers. Make sure you understand the nature of the community and how the community engages. Now, once you've gotten through all that, my favorite question is, are there any skeletons in the closet?
Love it.
And if you ask that question, you'll either catch them off guard and they will stagger and stutter and not be able to give you a straight answer. That's not a good thing. Or you'll get a straight out answer of, yeah, there's a couple of things that, happened here. I've got a couple of, 2-star reviews, or, the product is, we're short on supply right now. Or you'll get, no, absolutely, there's no skeletons in the closet. Feel free to interrogate as much as you like. And all you're really looking for is an open, honest and transparent answer in return. But I find that to be a great question.
Such a good question. Thank you. And there's another one, like not a question, but a really good statement that I've picked up from one of my mentors doing due diligence in other types of investments. And it's to not look for the things that are already there, but it's to really look for the things that you can't see. And that adds on to the back of your question, like, are there any skeletons in the closet, which is a really good question to ask. And I find being that person where you can just be upfront, honest, and have a really good, real, solid conversation with them, then they're going to appreciate it, and they're going to appreciate you as an investor as well. So I think that's really valuable information to understand, is that just jump on the phone and be real with each other. And so, Blake, I noticed that, like, I'm on Flippa a lot, and a lot of my clients are on Flippa a lot. And I've noticed there's been some pretty cool changes happening to Flippa. So I wanted to ask you, since you've been in, what's the biggest focus and direction Flippa's sort of going in at the moment to help sellers come and sell businesses and buyers buy good investments?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot going on. When we think about the important things, we obviously think about both sides of the marketplace. So there are sellers, they're trying to sell their passion projects, and there are buyers, and they're trying to buy their next great investment. And so for us, it's really about three things. And the first one is that we want to be the best and simplest place to list your business for sale. And that encompasses lots of things, but those things are designed to benefit both sides of the marketplace. And so what we mean is that it should be simple and efficient to list. I should be able to access tools which help me articulate how good my business is, what the story behind my business is, and ultimately I should also be able to tap into some features which enable me to present my business in the best light. And so there's a couple of things going on there, and that is that we are connecting to the accounting software providers. And so there's lots of accounting software providers throughout the world. So there's Xero and QuickBooks Online, and there's MYOB, and there's Sage, and there's FreshBooks, and there's Zoho, and there's many, many more. And so we're going to undertake a project whereby we connect those financial verification sources direct to the platform. So with one click, you'll be able to expose your accounting data, and that will give business owners the ability to show off the quality of their business, and business buyers the ability to verify that information at speed. And that's something we're working on and is really cool. The next, and there's a lot of other things in there, the next kind of pillar for us is trust. And so right now we've been working really hard on integrating identity verification for both buyers and sellers. And so the important thing is you want to know who you're buying from. And from a business owner's perspective, you want to know who is buying your business. And so we'll be integrating profiles more conclusively into Flippa. And historically, Flippa had kind of anonymous usernames, and that's not particularly helpful. And so anonymous usernames are no longer a practice on Flippa. That can't happen. You have to use your full name, and that's being mandated very shortly. And then, of course, ID verification. So you'll be asked to essentially present a government-issued ID, and that will be verified. And so it's really important to understand who's who in the zoo and make sure that people know who they're conversing and speaking with, be it via email communication, on the discussion forum itself, or over a phone call, as you mentioned. And then the next thing really is about connectivity. So connecting buyers and sellers without having to browse. And so that's what we call buyer matching. And right now, if you see the big register button or link in the top right-hand side of Flippa, it enables you to register. But the thing we've added there is buyer preferences. So you can go through and create a profile, select the business model you're interested in, the industry you're interested in, the location, and then, of course, your budget. And so what we will do with that information is when new sellers list their businesses or websites on the platform, we will match you up to those. So we'll send you an email saying, here is a new business which matches your preferences. You can opt out and unsubscribe at any time. You can change your preferences at any time. But essentially, it's about facilitating that connection so that people don't have to trawl through all the listings to find what they're looking for and instead get matched up to them. So think of it as a dating service. And so then there's lots more going on, but there's some big things.
Massive things. I particularly love the one how you're connecting with, accounting software. That's going to be a huge value add to the marketplace for sure. The verification, I've seen that myself. Even being a previous user, I've had to give you guys my ID. And then I'm getting emails from Holly, who sends me updates on different businesses that may be a match for me as well. So it's really, really cool. And I can see Flippa is growing and really making sure that it's a safe and solid place to buy great investments and help both sides of the party. And I'm really grateful for that because it makes my job a little bit easier. And also a lot more fun because, we can go away and use those sorts of tools. So excellent, Blake. I just want to say thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. Where can people find more about you and what you guys do at Flippa?
Yeah, great question. Certainly more than happy to listen to customers and take feedback. So I'm available at Blake@Flippa, that's BLAKE @Flippa.com. Always happy to hear from the community, always willing to take feedback and we'll certainly take that on board and see what positive changes we can make to the platform. So that's place number one. Certainly look me up on LinkedIn. You can see my background. I'm more than happy to connect with people in the space and learn from what other people are doing and have that conversation. And then, of course, check out all the changes we're making at Flippa. We're about to start a product blog, which will essentially provide updates on all of the things we're up to. So keep track of that.
Awesome. And I've got a blog post coming out soon on Flippa too, which is very exciting. So again, Blake, thank you so much for jumping on this episode. And everybody who's listening, please go away, like and subscribe, and we'll speak to you again soon.